The Treaty on Open Skies allows flights over the territory of one country by another for the purpose of gathering information. The purpose of this video is to demonstrate the degree of the resolution capability of the Open Skies platform's three main sensors: optical, synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, and infrared, or IR. This video will provide the information to help you assess the potential risk from imagery of your facility and determine the necessary actions you may need to take in the event of an open skies overflight. How does open skies imagery compare with that of satellites? Operationally, the open skies platform is less predictable than satellites in that you have less warning time and have an irregular coverage pattern. Because of the open skies aircraft's ability to radically vary its altitude, flight path, and direction of approach, common countermeasures adopted against satellites may be ineffective. Unlike satellites, the open skies aircraft combines multiple sensors on the same platform. This capability permits the collection of multiple sensor imagery of the same target from the same vantage point at the same time, a procedure that greatly enhances the exploitability of collected imagery. The Open Skies platform has the ability to fly under the weather so long as it does not go below the certified minimum altitude identified for the sensor and lens film filter combination. At operating costs estimated between $5,000 and $10,000 per flight hour, open skies overflights offer an attractive alternative to space-based sensors as a poor man's national technical means to countries without an indigenous capability. The shaded columns represent the resolution capability of the three main open skies sensors: optical, IR, and SAR. As you can see, open skies imagery is at least an order of magnitude better than what is commercially available. As opposed to the predictability of satellite transit paths and times, open skies provides only 16 to 24 hours notice. In addition, the treaty allows sharing of imagery among signatories, so you don't have to fly to obtain imagery. Let's take a closer look at each of the three sensors and the resolution limit allowed by the treaty. The optical sensors are panoramic and framing cameras. The treaty allows for a ground resolution of no better than 30 centimeters. The resolution limit for synthetic aperture radar is 3 meters. And for infrared is 50 centimeters. While optical sensors have the highest resolution of all three sensors, they are, however, weather and light dependent. SAR images are a measure of reflectivity based on material absorption. The more reflective a surface, the stronger the image. IR is a thermal image, indicating differences between hot and cold surfaces. SAR and IR are all weather and can be used day or night. What does 30 centimeters optical look like in terms of imagery resolution? Let's step through a series of photographs at various resolutions. Here's 20 meters. Looks like possibly a road. At 15 meters, you gain a little more definition that seems to indicate that this may possibly be a runway and parking apron. At 10 meters, the objects on this apron look like aircraft. At 5 meters, you can see that these objects are aircraft. At 2.5 meters, a clearer definition of aircraft edges. Honing in on one of the aircraft, at 5 meters you get a very rough outline of what looks like an aircraft. More definition at 2.5 meters. At 30 centimeters, you can see the cable going to the temporary engine power supply. Based on the 30 centimeter ground resolution limit for optical imagery, the following are examples of what one can and cannot do. You can identify small aircraft by type, such as F-14s, F-15s, F-16s, when singly deployed, but cannot identify a specific model fighter, such as an F-16A versus F-16C, by small details, such as dielectric patches on wings. You can read call letters and numbers on wings when 3 feet high, but cannot identify the pitot tube on a fighter aircraft. You can detect uploaded weapons on aircraft wings, but cannot identify a specific weapon type. You can identify an F-16 fighter from an F-16 trainer by canopy configuration, but cannot identify on the appropriate model fighter, wing flap actuator fairings, and yaw vanes. You can detect presence of shipboard weapons and major electronics, guns, missiles, surface search radar, but cannot accurately identify by specific type shipboard weapons and major electronics. You can detect the presence and pattern of mooring lines, but cannot identify draft marks. You can detect presence of life rails when raised, but cannot identify mast configuration. You can accurately distinguish smaller vehicle types, for instance pickup trucks versus sedans, but cannot identify small ground support equipment by type, such as dollies, tow bars, and fire extinguisher carts. Keep in mind that both panoramic and framing cameras provide a three-dimensional effect. The combination of oblique views and stereoscopic coverage will allow one to distinguish height and may possibly be able to see into open-door hangars. Here are some optical imagery examples from the Open Skies platform that approach the treaty limitations. Looking down on the piers at a naval base, we can see several different types of vessels. A blow-up of the photo clearly shows 2 Nimitz-class carriers. Note that the decks of the carriers are clean, with few open areas or lines going over the sides, a sign that they are not in an extensive maintenance period and could be made ready to sail in short order. Here are 4 Spruance-class destroyers, a tender, and a fuel barge. Here we can make out several submarines and their tenders. At this naval shipyard, we see ships in mothball. Here is an LHA in dry dock, a carrier, and another LHA beyond that. Again, an indication of the state of repair and readiness. Submarine bases, like this one, may be observed during an open skies overflight. Here you can see 6 submarines as well as cranes and fueling barges. One barge's position with regard to one submarine suggests that the submarine is probably undergoing longer maintenance than the others. Here is a submarine in dry dock. As you have seen, the imagery can provide a good deal of information concerning the order of battle and readiness of this submarine base. The imagery can also provide a confirmation that the base is not preparing for war. Overflights may also fly over air bases. At this one, you can make out a group of Air Force C-141s on the flight line. A key consideration here is whether the number of aircraft on the ground is normal for the base, or if it is significantly larger, then indicating a possible military buildup, or if smaller, indicating activity is underway. A look at another Air Force facility shows a number of planes being unloaded and others undergoing maintenance. Here are aircraft on the ground. Even with the enhanced capabilities of open sky sensors, not everything is crystal clear. Photos taken from an open skies aircraft can also be used in treaty verification. Here you see a group of B-52s that have been broken up under the terms of the START Treaty. The U.S. and Russia must progressively destroy bombers. By closely checking the number of dismantled aircraft, open skies imagery can verify whether the observed party is adhering to the treaty. Now let's discuss the capability of the synthetic aperture radar. SAR images are a measure of reflectivity based on material absorption. As a result, a tarp covering a highly reflective object may be ineffective in hiding the object from a SAR image. The SAR images from the Open Skies platform far exceed commercially available radar imaging products. The treaty limit of 3-meter ground resolution can allow one to identify airfields, detect presence or absence of small aircraft, determine level of occupancy in a vehicle park, and detect small ships and ship wakes. The following SAR images approximate that allowed by the treaty. Here you see a distinct contrast between land and water. Along the coastline are piers and a bridge. The baseball fields in this image are identified by the reflection off the fences. Here, along the side of the runway, you see buildings and hangars and can detect the presence of aircraft. As you can see from these examples, the information acquired from the 3-meter resolution is limited. Now let's look at the infrared capability. The treaty resolution limit for IR is 50 centimeters. This resolution can show heat from operating vehicles, cool spots in buildings, identify ships, aircraft, and vehicles, and night activities. The following IR images approximate that allowed by the treaty. Here you can see the residual heat from the engine exhaust emanating from the concrete. In this image of a parking apron, you can see ghost images of where planes were. The maintenance sheds are most likely open areas with a roof covering, since they do not emanate heat, whereas the buildings and housing are occupied, as indicated by a thermal image. In the wintertime, you can expect such an image to have an even higher contrast. In this image, you can observe the contrast from nature. The tree and tree shadows on sand are more visible than a forest of low vegetation. Here you see the contrast between water and low-level vegetation. In this shot, the beach is clearly visible, again because of the temperature difference between hot sand and disturbed ground. Note also the thermal currents in the water. IR can provide information on what may have been because of the thermal image remaining, or if no movement has been made, a confirmation. The greatest value of open skies imagery is when multiple sensors are used at the same time. While there is a limit to the resolution, a little may be a lot to the trained eye coupled with other intelligence sources. Imagery collected over time could enhance the value. Remember also that countries will be able to collect imagery that may not have been available to them. The Department of Navy's concept of operations for implementation is designed to ensure that open skies is a manageable threat. Commands that have identified the need can expect timely notification and other support as required. However, only you can define what is sensitive and should not be imaged. Sources for help in defining elements of your program are your Operations Security Officer and your local Naval Criminal Investigative Service Office.